Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Midwest Climate Adaptation Science Center's July Science Seminar. We're going to get started here in just 1 minute. I trust everyone also just heard the announcement saying that this seminar was recorded. So just like we reference at the bottom of this slide, we ask that you mute when you're not speaking, and you can choose whether you want to have video on or off, knowing that this presentation, this hour-long webinar, will be recorded and archived on the soon-to-be forthcoming Midwest CASC website and YouTube channel. I guess we have a YouTube channel already.
We do.
All right.
I'll link to that at the end of the slides here today.
Perfect. All right. Well, let's get started. Hi, everyone. It is lovely to see you on a Monday afternoon here. I guess we're all coming from various locations that represent the headquarters of the Midwest Climate Adaptation Science Center and all of its disparate locations. You are attending what is our monthly science seminar. In fact, at the end of today's presentation, we're going to have something to say about where this seminar might be headed. A bit of an open question, how we might want to use this platform going forward. But today we're going to focus on some new projects that are getting started as exemplars of the type of work that we do here at the Midwest Climate Adaptation Science Center. Jess, I would invite you to put up the next slide. So I'm Jessica Hellman. That's what that slide just said. I am the consortium director. I represent one portion of the Midwest Climate Adaptation Center, a science center, and that is the consortium of partners who work with the USGS. Together, these two halves form the Midwest CASC. Who is the consortium? We always want to show this slide in our science seminar presentations to remind ourselves of the institutions that form the consortium. We're a partnership of organizations who bring the talent and the capacity and the knowledge of our institutions to science building in the name of the U.S. Geological Survey and the Department of Interior. We are all striving toward bringing the best science forward in climate adaptation for natural and cultural resources across our region. Today, in our seminar, we're going to take just a couple of moments to share with you all an upcoming event that's a deep dive into the Midwest CASC's operations, projects, priorities, and capacity building. And our program manager, Alyssa Welch, will lead us in that presentation. Then we're going to turn to some presentations of recently funded projects led by our USGS colleagues. And Kristen Voorhees will introduce each of those presenters today. We'll have a Q&A about those projects and those presentations, and then we'll spend just a couple of minutes talking about how we are coming up to our 1-year anniversary of the Midwest CASC. And the key question is, how do we want to use this platform moving forward? So without further ado, I'd like to turn the floor over to Alyssa, who will share with us what is the Midwest CASC annual gathering.
Hi, everyone. As Jessica said, I'm Alyssa Welch. I am the program manager for the Midwest CASC. And we have been working for several weeks, several months now on this first annual gathering that is slated for August 25th and 26th, hosted by one of our consortium member partners, University of Wisconsin in Madison. And we are hoping to use this first annual gathering as an opportunity to share out some of the research that we've already been engaged in, focus on training, especially for our students that we're engaging and our early career professionals that we're engaging in our research, and discuss, especially in this first year, how we're building capacity, how we are defining our goals as the Midwest CASC. So we've organized this agenda by theme. So on day one, we're talking about, who we are, who are our partners, who are our researchers, and trying to gain a better appreciation, especially as Jessica mentioned, in this broad region that we're covering in the Midwest, about getting to know one another so we can build those important collaborative relationships. Day two, the Friday, is focused on charting the course. That means, how are we doing what we're doing, and what are we looking forward to in the coming year? So for this year, our intended audience is our CASC members. That means our consortium members, our PIs from our consortium-led projects, as well as our USGS-led projects. It is our students and our direct partners working on those projects. As we move into future years of this gathering, we anticipate, we're excited about really sharing out those future project successes and really broadening this audience, or exploring how is best appropriate to explore these successes, share these successes out to our broader audience. So if you have a question at all about whether or not attending this annual gathering is right for you, please feel free to reach out to me directly. If I didn't answer your question in this short overview of the annual gathering. But we are excited, at the end of the day, we're excited to build those collaborative relationships with our existing and new partners across the region. So feel free to drop me a message if you have additional questions. I'll put my contact in the chat here as well. And I also just put the registration link in the chat too. So thanks. And I will pass it over to Kristen, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Alyssa, and welcome everyone. I'm really excited to be introducing to you all some of our project leads for the 22 solicitation. And so we're introducing today the project leads from USGS, from our science centers and their teams. And hopefully soon we'll have announcements for those that are from our university PIs. Right now, we just want to kind of highlight these, but they're not the whole portfolio of what was awarded this year. Also on the last call, you guys heard from Jessica Hellman and Sarah Skipney on our Midwest technical assessment. That's one of the projects that was also funded on this year's proposal or solicitation. And so before I introduce the team, I want to just give you a quick rundown of the numbers from our solicitation in case you hadn't heard of like previous seminars, but we had 61 statements of interest last year, totaling over 20 million. We invited 19 proposals that were full proposals requesting about 10.8 million, and we've awarded 7 proposals for funding. And several of those are on this call today from the USGS science centers. And so that's about 6.5 million that we awarded in fiscal year 22. And some of you may have applied for the fiscal year 23 solicitation that just closed last week. So more exciting science coming our way, I'm certain. I really wish I could just like stop and have everybody do like a big cheer, because like this is just so exciting. This is the first kind of set of projects that we're going through our university host at University of Minnesota. So these USGS ones are not like through Minnesota, but for our team, for Jessica and Alyssa and Jess, myself and Olivia, we're really excited that this kind of first round of assignments is fully through our Midwest CASC. So on today's call, we have a few different presenters, and I'm going to just say their names and then I'm going to let them introduce themselves per project. So we have a slide for each project, and I'll have the PIs introduce themselves, their team, and their partners, as well as what they expect to come out of the project. And so we do want this to be kind of a meet and greet. We want you guys to drop questions in the chat. PIs, we want you to give us your excitement and tell us, kind of also about just whatever we wouldn't honestly expect to hear about the project. So just kind of sharing that excitement. On our call, we have John Delaney from the Upper Midwest Environmental Science Center, and he'll be presenting on 2 of our projects. He's a co-PI with Ryan Berner on the first project we'll hear from, and then we'll hear from Becky Creeling, also from the Upper Midwest Environmental Science Center, who's a co-PI with Owen McKenna from the Northern Prairie Wildlife Research Center. And then they will be followed up by Max Vanderberg and Molly Van Apeldoorn. And because I feel like I have talked a lot and I want them to get into it, I'm going to just call on John to start off on the first slide, which is the project with Ryan Berner. John, are you there?
I'm here. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So as Chris mentioned, I'm with the USGS. I'm a biologist there, and I work at the Upper Midwest Environmental Sciences Center in La Crosse, Wisconsin, as do all of the PIs on this project. So our PIs include Ryan Berner, who is a research ecologist, and he's the lead PI on the project. We also have Kristen Buska, who's an ecologist, and Molly Van Apeldoorn, who is also an ecologist at the center. So just to provide some background context, extreme precipitation and the resulting flooding in the Upper Mississippi River Basin is already challenging management and maintenance of ecosystems, infrastructure, and livelihoods. And climate change projections indicate we could see further increases in precipitation extremes in the future. And addressing an issue as spatially complex as precipitation and flooding is going to require cross-disciplinary collaboration across the basin. So for this project, we'll be focusing on natural solutions, which is often called nature-based solutions, to reduce the impacts of extreme precipitation events and make communities and ecosystems more resilient for future extreme events. So nature-based solutions such as tallgrass prairie strips, riparian forest buffers, levee setbacks, and wetland restoration have great potential to reduce runoff, sediment and nutrient transport, as well as provide a multitude of ecosystem services, including carbon sequestration. So the workshop will be about 50 to 75 participants. We're going to be holding it in Madison, Wisconsin, probably March or April of 2023. It'll be 3 days. The first day will focus on resource management. So we'll bring in resource managers to share the challenges that they're facing and how they're working to address them. On the second day, we'll bring in scientists to share the latest climate, hydrological, and biological information on current and future issues related to extreme precipitation and flooding. And then on the third day, we'll break out into groups and tackle specific topics and challenges that were identified during the first 2 days of the workshop. So the planning of the workshop is going to be heavily supported by a workshop advisory committee with representatives from the Midwest CASC, the Upper Mississippi River Basin Association, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Climate Preparedness and Resilience Community of Practice, or CPR-COP, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Ojibwe Division of Resource Management, the Nature Conservancy, Mississippi River Cities and Towns Initiative, and others. So some expected outcomes from our project are increased awareness and understanding of potential for future extreme precipitation and flooding and natural solutions that could help address them. And we hope to foster cross-disciplinary partnerships and stimulate further research and collaboration into natural solutions across the basin that will be supported through micro grants for promising projects.
Great, thanks. That's for the first one? Because I know you're presenting also on the next one. Yes.
Yep, that's all I have for the first one.
Great, thanks, John. I'm excited to hear about workshops, everyone, because we all have been so much separated by the pandemic. So really looking forward to that, John, and we're excited that there's so many partners. I couldn't put them all on the slide. Like I tried to highlight them, but it's just a really great breadth, I think, of folks involved in that. So thank you. And then Jess, you can switch to the next slide, which is the project that John is the lead PI on, and we'll hear about that. Thanks, John.
Yeah, so on this project, Kristen Buska and I will be continuing a project that started back in 2019 where we worked with partners from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to create an interactive watershed vulnerability assessment tool for the Midwest region. And the tool contains 15 climate change metrics that we co-produced with the Fish and Wildlife Service, along with 5 metrics related to adaptive capacity. And the metrics are summarized at the watershed scale, and users can weight the importance of each of the metrics to produce custom watershed vulnerability maps for the Midwest region. So they can pick out watersheds that might be more or less vulnerable to the impacts of climate change that they're most interested in. We've previously used the tool in a workshop with the Fish and Wildlife Service to apply concepts of climate change vulnerability, scenario planning, and adaptation thinking for managed wetlands in the Midwest region. And over the course of our project, as we were working with resource managers, we realized how important and complex communicating and incorporating uncertainty in climate change projections is for adaptation efforts, especially when you're trying to do that spatially. So we're receiving guidance from the CASC to communicate uncertainty within our tool more explicitly. The main goals of this project are to update the tool with best practices for communicating uncertainty and to present the updates to resource managers in the region. And we hope to expand the utility of the tool to a broader audience with potential partners that are listed on the slide there. We will hold a workshop to demo the updated tool and work with 1 or 2 groups individually on a custom application of the tool that's going to serve as an additional use case that demonstrates how the tool can be used as a stepping stone to further adaptation thinking and eventual planning in the face of uncertainty. And that's all I have for that.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Give a shout out in the chat if you've already interacted with the tool that John was describing. Just trying to wake people up a little bit. All right, we can go to the next one, Jess, and we have Becky Creeling from the project where Owen McKenna is the lead PI. Becky, are you on?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Kristen.
Yeah.
So I'm a research ecologist with the USGS stationed in the same place that John was at the Upper Midwest Environmental Sciences Center. And I am a co-PI in this project. Owen McKenna is the lead PI, and he is a research ecologist with the Northern Prairie Wildlife Research Center in Jamestown, North Dakota. There are 2 other project co-PIs. One is Max Post-Vandenberg, who's also a research ecologist for the USGS in Northern Prairie, and Josh Esch, who is a regional refuge hydrologist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in the Region 3 office. So just some background on our project. Wetland conservation in the Upper Mississippi River Basin is a priority for land managers to sustain wildlife habitat, especially in the areas where in Minnesota and Iowa, where the Upper Mississippi River Basin intersects with the prairie-pothole region. Now, the depressional wetlands found in the prairie-pothole region provide important ecosystem services on top of wildlife habitat. These services include floodwater storage and improving water quality. Now, understanding how conservation actions and management decisions can impact both wildlife habitat and water quality and quantity in the Upper Mississippi River Basin is critical for helping the region adapt to future climate change. High intensity rainfall events can cause depressional wetlands to overflow and connect with Mississippi River tributaries, which reduces the capacity for these depressional wetlands to improve water quality and can increase nutrient runoff into the Mississippi River. An increase in the magnitude and frequency of these extreme precipitation events is predicted with climate change. Thus, management agencies need a more comprehensive decision support tools for assessing the capacity for depressional wetlands to store floodwater, process nutrients, and provide critical habitat under future climate projections. So for this study, we're focusing on the Minnesota River Basin, where wetlands have been drained to promote productive agriculture. The Minnesota River Basin is in an area where the Upper Mississippi River Basin and the prairie-pothole regions overlap. So we have 2 main project goals. The first goal is to estimate how the impacts from increased precipitation and wetland drainage impact the hydrological connectivity between the depressional wetlands and the riparian wetlands along the Minnesota River, and how this hydrological connectivity affects water quality in the river. The second goal is to develop a decision support tool for managers in the Minnesota River Basin so they can use for wetland protection and restoration. And we plan to work with managers and our partners at a collaborative workshop in St. Paul in October to co-produce this decision support tool. And our partners include scientists from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the University of Minnesota, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and the U.S. Geological Survey. We have also invited stakeholders that are actively managing wetlands in the Minnesota River Basin, and they include land managers from the Upper Sioux community, the Lower Sioux community, the Shakopee Medwalkton Sioux community, and the Prairie Island Indian community, and land managers from the Minnesota DNR, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Nature Conservancy, and Ducks Unlimited. We've also invited scientists from the USDA NRCS Minnesota State Office. And we have a 2-year project timeline for this study.
All right, and thank you, Becky. I did not talk with everybody before this, folks, so that's why it's kind of like, all right, is that what you got there? Thank you so much, Becky. This was an exciting project also for the link all the way to those end users at U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Department of Natural Resources. So for those of you who are thinking about coming to our Midwest annual gathering, these are the kind of ideas and connections we want to continue to help support and build. And we can maybe hear more from the folks on these projects about how they did that if you come to the gathering. Just a little plug there. All right, thank you, Becky. Next, we will have Max Post-Vanderberg presenting on developing a decision-making and climate adaptation framework for the National Wildlife Refuge System. Thanks, Max.
Thanks, Kristen. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. So I'll first introduce our project team. So our project team is composed of folks from the USGS, the University of Minnesota, as well as the Fish and Wildlife Service. So on the USGS side, there's myself. I was previously introduced by Becky, actually. So I'm a research ecologist. I'm based at Northern Prairie Wildlife Research Center. Kristen Bushka and John Delaney, who've also been introduced, are also co-investigators on this project. This part of our research team brings experience with planning and decision-making frameworks, as well as modeling approaches to solving decision science kinds of problems. On the University of Minnesota side, we have Heidi Roop, who's a climate scientist at University of Minnesota. And she has also brought in a postdoc who is working for her named Susie Clark, who will be helping with sort of synthesizing and compiling and translating climate information for us to use in the more decision-making oriented portion of this project. And then on the Fish and Wildlife side, we have Josh Ish, who's a regional hydrologist in Region 3 of the Fish and Wildlife Service, as well as Josh Booker and Jamie Lebrun, who work in the inventory and monitoring component of the Fish and Wildlife Service. And our partners include the management staff at 3 different refuges: the Agassiz National Wildlife Refuge, Illinois River National Wildlife Refuge, and Ottawa National Wildlife Refuge. So with those 3 refuge stations, the impetus for this project really grew out of some conversations that we'd been having with Josh Ish of the Fish and Wildlife Service. And he was kind of pointing out that, you know, the service and the refuge system in particular have a need to start to think about climate adaptation. But one of the hurdles that they face is a lack of expertise, a lack of data, and sort of a lack of framework for how to integrate climate information into refuge planning. So the goal of this project is to bring together the principles of decision analysis, the resist, accept, direct framework, which is being used by the Park Service, and the available climate data that we have to try to construct a framework that the National Wildlife Refuge System can use to start informing their planning documents and their decision making in terms of what sort of climate adaptation strategies they should be implementing today as part of those planning efforts. One of the things that we're going to do is we're going to address some of the issues of uncertainty that surround climate projections and things like that, and how you can actually use and leverage that uncertainty to actually make decisions that are robust to that uncertainty. So I think that's about it for that project.
Thank you, Max. I just want to observe, I heard a few key things there related to decision-making, barriers to decision-making, capacity, opportunity for addressing those challenges and barriers, excuse me. And I think that's sort of a theme here among these projects of how do we, as our scientists, identify those barriers and bring our best skill set to the other side of it. So it's, I appreciate that, Max. And framework, that was the other word I heard, strategic framework, a lot. So, you know, we all kind of relate to that and seeing it kind of spelled out in lots of different areas, despite them being commonalities. They need specifics and kind of like on the ground applications for those refuges you mentioned and their specific management plans. So we look forward to hearing more about that. And so last but not least, we have Molly Van Apeldoorn, Mary Van Apeldoorn, are you on?
Hi. Yes, I am.
Wow. So I corrected the slide, but not the name. I apologize, everyone. This is a Kristen error for that because I have another Mary in the portfolio. Sorry about that, Molly.
That's all right. Thank you. Yeah, I'm Molly Van Apeldoorn. I'm an ecologist at the Upper Midwest Environmental Sciences Center in La Crosse. I'm the project PI for this work on floodplain forests, which are an understudied ecosystem, especially in the Upper Mississippi River, where we've got a lot of work going on currently to try and tackle some big challenges for these systems. My project team is Dr. Marcella Windemuller-Campione, who is a silviculturist, associate professor in the Department of Forest Resources at the University of Minnesota, and Dr. Dan Griffin, who is a dendrochronologist and is an assistant professor in the Department of Geography at the University of Minnesota. And the three of us have come to work on the river the past few years, and we've been integrating in with the management community here, who is quite active on trying to understand changes in the floodplain forests and how they relate to the hydrology and what kind of management actions they should be taking in order to ensure healthy and resilient forest ecosystems into the future. So our partners that are listed on the bottom of the slide include foresters from the Corps of Engineers, managers from the Fish and Wildlife Service, the Forest Service, and the Department of Natural Resources of Minnesota and Wisconsin. We've been meeting regularly with them and going on field trips. It's been really astounding to see the changes in hydrology that have been occurring through time and their impacts on the forest. So this really led to this project to try and understand what those changes have been and to really establish an understanding about flood forest relationships in order to develop information and tools to help the managers in their practices going forward. So we're developing some information based on a pretty astounding data set that we have of over 5,000 tree cores. We've got an army of undergrads and grad students lined up to process those and really make some really clear linkages between hydrology and forest development and forest growth, tree growth. We're using that information to parameterize some process-based models of forest succession in the river and really hone those models in on what might be going on in the river system. We're combining that with information on hydrology and projected flooding patterns that might be occurring in the Upper Mississippi River floodplain, which uses a geospatial model to develop spatially explicit information. So one of the products that we hope to get out of this too is a hydrologic sensitivity map of the floodplain so that managers can use it to identify targeted places to do their restoration work or choose not to allocate resources in certain areas that may just not be conducive to floodplain forests in the future. So we're hoping that that's a valuable thing for them as well. But ultimately, we hope that our continued interactions with our partners will allow for trainings on how to use the information and tools that we develop and help push their management actions to the best that they can be in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Again, lots of collaboration on multiple levels. And I want to just pause and acknowledge there's a lot of dialogue in the chat. Well, there's some dialogue in the chat. I think people are seeing some connections, but we didn't have any questions pop up yet. Are there any folks on the call who would like to ask questions about the projects that were presented or of the PIs who are here who are newly starting on this on these projects?
Don't be shy.
Well, I think we have opportunities to continue to interact. We talked about the Midwest annual gathering, and so we can go ahead and do our next step, Jess. And if folks do pop things in the chat, we can come back to it. But I had a colleague tell me that nobody minds a short meeting. So if we wrap up here early today, that's also good.
All right, it's my turn to take the floor then, I think. And I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about the science seminars themselves. Oh, I realized that my not actually sharing this full screen, but it's not that important. You can probably see the slide. If you are unaware, we are about to hit an important milestone for the Midwest Cask. Our first anniversary will be in September. And so related to that, you're going to see a lot of new and exciting things coming your way. And one of those things is bigger and better science seminars. We've been doing these since January 2022. And when we started doing these seminars, our primary goal was basically to provide a space for you all to engage with us, the Cask, to learn about who we are and to highlight important aspects of our work. So that's what the past 6 or so seminars have focused on. And we think hopefully they've been very useful. We think we've been successful in telling you a little bit about who we are. But now as we look ahead to year 2, we want to really expand and diversify the kinds of conversations that we have in this space. So that is where we're going to ask for your help. Right after this call, I will be sharing a survey via email with everyone here. It's pretty short. It's got 2 key sections. One, we're going to ask you all for if you have any topics or speakers that you would like to hear from in these seminars, including yourself. You're welcome to volunteer to yourself if you'd like to present. And then the second part will be about format. Do you really like this kind of presentation focused format? Do you want more interactive sessions? Do you really like breakout groups? Do you think they should be longer or shorter? Those kinds of questions. So it should only take a few minutes of your time, and it would really help us as we plan out an exciting second year of programming to make sure that it is going to be fun and useful for everybody here. So I think that is it on that. Again, that survey will be in your inboxes shortly. Would really appreciate you filling it out. And if you ever have questions or ideas related to the seminars, feel free to get in touch with me or anybody on the team anytime. We're happy to chat. And I'm gonna go to our last slide here. related to that, because we want to take some time to plan the next year of science seminars, and we have the annual gathering happening in August right at the same time, we will not be back with the next science seminar until September 26, 2022. So you can mark your calendars now. We'll have information coming out about that in the next couple of weeks. And then just a couple other housekeeping things before we wrap up. First is that we now have a YouTube channel where we're archiving these seminars. You can see the link on the page there. There's a channel, there's a playlist with all of these. We'll be adding today's there as well, but you can look back to any seminar that you would like to review from the last 6 months. And I think that's it. Also, we do have the link to our newsletter sign up there. If you would like to sign up or share that with anyone you think might be interested, that's where they can hear updates about upcoming science seminars and other important CASC news. I think that is it for today then. Thanks everybody for joining us. Any last points from Kristen or any other CASC folks that you want to make before I sign us off here?
This is Jessica Hellman. I just tossed into the chat a second to please, the richness of our understanding of what's possible for this science seminar going forward is a function of the responses that we get from all of you. So of course, this is a place where we can share information about calls for proposals, about funded projects. We definitely know we want to spend some time sharing information so that people can forge collaborations where their common interests lie. But it can be a lot more than that might be broadly useful for our folks working on adaptation in natural and cultural resources across our region. Things you might want to learn about: intersection points, maybe where natural and cultural resources intersect with other neighboring issues might be the edges to explore in this platform. We could have lightning talks, we could have keynote speakers, we could have networking events. Please open your mind, think creatively about what would be interesting and useful to you. And then we will do our best at the time of our anniversary to roll out a platform that meets as many of those needs as we think we can accomplish. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Thank you for participating in the last several months where we've been rolling out this platform and gathering place. And we look forward to future engagement opportunities here. And please, if anyone has further thoughts or comments on the individual projects as they launch, or you have connection points for folks that might be useful, or data sets, opinions, networks that you think could help those projects, we really want them to be successful. So please reach out to those folks directly, or feel free to reach out to those folks directly. Right, Kristen?
Yes.
Awesome.
We're happy to facilitate those. So if you're just not even sure who to talk to, like send